start on the Korean peninsula, where North and South Korea are holding talks on Pyongyang's participation in next month's Winter Olympic Games. The head of the working level talks spoke with reporters before his departure north.
Hello, Daniel. The two sides are still holding working level talks at Tongilgak, a building on the northern side of Panmunjom. Now, the focus of the talks is sending a North Korean art troupe to the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games, including the number of artists to perform, the venue, and the schedule. The North four-member delegation is led by the director of North Korea's Performing Arts Bureau at their culture ministry, along with two orchestra conductors and the leader of an all-female band called Moranbong. It's likely that North Korea wants to send the Moranbong Band to perform during the Games. The band was established in 2012 by the North leader Kim Jong-un, featuring Western-style music and outfits. On the sidelines, there could also be talks about doing joint performances during the opening and closing ceremony of the Winter Games.
And not to be left in the back burner is another subject in which time is of the essence, sending their Olympic athletes across the border to the south. But that will be a topic to be thoroughly covered in another session, I believe, Myung-yul?
You're right, Daniel. Actually, North Korea made a counter-proposal today suggesting that the talks be held this Wednesday for talks at the vice ministerial level. Now, South Korea accepted the North counter-proposal and will hold a meeting at the House of Peace on the southern side of Panmunjom. Now, the North needs to finalize on how many athletes it will be sending and what route they'll take to get to Pyeongchang. The North will also be sending a cheering squad, observers, supporters, North Korean journalists, and a taekwondo demonstration team. So there are still a lot of practical issues that need to be discussed. The International Olympic Committee will hold a meeting this Saturday, January 20th, with delegations from North and South Korea to finalize the participation of North Korean athletes. So we presume more working-level talks will be held before the big IOC meeting. Back to you, Daniel.
The North art delegation's participation at the Pyeongchang Olympics is gaining a lot of attention at home and abroad. I'll hold the talks to reach good agreements on operational matters.
Buses from the South Korean side headed up to the border early on Monday. The talks are taking place on the North Korean side of the Panmunjom truce village in the demilitarized zone. Pyongyang requests the talks to discuss the sending of performance artists to the Pyeongchang Games. Observers are speculating there are the all-female Moranbong Band music group whose leader is included on a list of participants in the talks. The group was reportedly formed by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The talks come after North Korea's state-run media criticized South Korean President Moon Jae-in over the weekend. In his New Year address, Moon mentioned his goal of denuclearizing the Korean peninsula. State media said Moon's absurd comments poured cold water on reconciliation efforts. It also suggested the possibility of North Korean athletes skipping the Olympic Games, saying Moon should keep in mind trains and buses carrying the North Olympic delegation are still in Pyongyang.
Japanese defense officials say a Chinese vessel spotted near the Senkaku Islands last week was a new type of nuclear-powered attack submarine. The officials say the submarine is larger and faster than older models and can carry anti-ship missiles. It was detected in the East China Sea on Thursday, traveling underwater. It was just outside Japanese waters in an area called the Contiguous Zone, where Japan has limited control. The submarine surfaced a day later in international waters, flying a Chinese flag. Chinese patrol ships have made incursions into the waters near the Senkaku Islands, but this is the first time a submarine has been spotted. Japan controls the islands and maintains they are an inherent part of its territory. China and Taiwan claim them. Now, Tokyo launched a protest with Beijing on Friday. The defense minister says officials are still trying to determine why the submarine was in the area.
The fact that the Chinese Navy's nuclear submarine navigated Japan's contiguous zone while remaining underwater unilaterally raises tensions. We are seriously concerned about the incident.
He says Japan's self-defense forces will continue to keep a close watch.
Well, there was panic in Hawaii yesterday morning, as you know, after that false emergency alert warned of an impending ballistic missile attack. Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard says she hopes the false alarm will now spur the Trump administration to try and step up peace talks with North Korea.
I've been calling for President Trump to sit across the table from Kim Jong-un without preconditions, work out the differences, figure out a way to build this pathway towards denuclearization, because there is so much at stake. The people of Hawaii recognized this yesterday, experienced it personally. The leaders of this country need to experience that same visceral understanding of how lives are at stake.
Well, joining us now is former ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton, as always, a Fox News contributor, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and chairman of the Gatestone Institute here in New York. So, Ambassador, should the president take the Congresswoman's advice and sit across the table from Kim Jong-un?
Of course not. Look, here's what goes into this negotiation. North Korea wants to have deliverable nuclear weapons, and we don't want them to have deliverable nuclear weapons. Maybe the Congresswoman knows what the compromise position is, but North Korea is not voluntarily going to give up that capability. I think what this mistake in Hawaii really shows is that we have gotten very complacent over several decades about the threat of nuclear weapons. If you're a baby boomer, you remember it well, doing duck and cover drills in school and that sort of thing. But there's at least a generation, the millennial generation, that has been alive since there was even an atmospheric nuclear test. So I think this is a serious matter, to be sure, in Hawaii, but the lesson it teaches us is not to go and see if Kim Jong-un's having a good day. It's to prepare better missile defenses and to think about the consequences of again living in a world where irresponsible leaders have their finger on the nuclear button.
And you mentioned the shelters. Remember the radioactive signs at some shelters that were stocked with food and water and those biscuits. I mean, that was another world, but it's the one in which we live right now.
Well, my understanding is that the market for home air raid shelters has been increasing recently in the sort of luxury variety. But the fact is, as a matter of basic history, if North Korea does get deliverable nuclear weapons, and it's on the verge of it, Iran is right behind them, then I think it is a historical turning point. I think it means a half a century or more of American counter-proliferation policy will have failed. And if these two rogue states get that capability, there's every reason to believe that others will, and perhaps even terrorist groups.
You know, the president has been harshly criticized for some of his language on North Korea. Others have been supporting it. Let me read you what a top retired South Korean general told a London think tank just a couple of days ago. I mean, he credits the president. His name is Lieutenant General Im Bum-chung. He's also at the Brookings Institute. He says this: "My president has stated that President Trump deserves huge credit for the two Koreas to coming to the table. So I don't think President Trump, I don't hope he is mad, but he has made the conditions where he has put the North Koreans at an imbalance. So for now, he's actually put us in a direction where negotiations have started. He says we will be able to find a better solution." Do you think the president's stance has put Kim Jong-un at an imbalance, and what does that mean?
Well, I think he's definitely convinced the Kim dictatorship in North Korea that the threat of possible military action against the North's nuclear weapons program is real. I don't think that has resulted in this upcoming joint Olympic team between the two Koreas. I think that's purely a propaganda ploy by Kim, other than it might buy him time. If the North is as close as many people, including some in our intelligence community, believe, if Kim Jong-un can divert the world's attention from his continuing progress, perhaps he can make it across the finish line and achieve that capability before we're able to do anything about it.
So do you think this is a bit of a head fake? I mean, he's going to be the good guy for a month, sending about 500 or so athletes and officials down to South Korea. At the same time, they're tinkering, with the nuclear devices and missiles back in the North.
Sure. Let's recall this scenario of joining the Olympic Games and the two Korean teams marching together has been tried before in 2000, 2004. So it's like with so many things with North Korea, they reach into their desk drawer, get out a playbook they've used before, and here it comes again. This is not an earth-shattering development. It's more evidence, I think, that it's a propaganda ploy.
So how do you think this will play out after the Olympics?
Well, I think our president made it very clear in his speech to the UN last September that denuclearization for North Korea was the only way forward. I don't think the Chinese have yet done what we've asked them to do, what they have the capability to do. So the president is approaching an unattractive binary choice, either letting North Korea get nuclear weapons, deliverable nuclear weapons, or looking at military force. It's, you know, he's been in office a year. This problem has been growing for 25 years, but he's going to be the one who has to come up with the answer.
Finally, at the end, do you think that Kim Jong-un would back down?
I don't think he would back down except presented with overwhelming force. And I think that's why, ironically, it may seem the prospects for a peaceful solution increase to the extent North Korea and China think that the U.S. military option is real.
Ambassador John Bolton, as always, we thank you for your insight and joining us.